Really quick, before we get into things, there is a mid-credit scene in this episode, so if you have not seen that, go watch it, then come back and we will get into all the things I want to talk about for Gen V Season 1 finale. Hi, I'm LadyJenevia, and we have finally reached the end of the season. It's been nothing like how I thought it would be to cover this show on a weekly basis. I certainly never expected to go on holiday in the middle of me covering a show on this channel because that's not something I've ever done before. Hopefully, all of the fans are coping all right with the fact that this episode was very short, shockingly short, I would say. I could hardly believe the runtime when I first clicked on my press screener to watch, but upon actually watching the episode, they ended up cramming a whole lot into it, so I didn't really know how to feel because, well, how am I supposed to psychologically process even more than what already happened in the shortest episodic runtime of the season? Considering how short the episode is, though, we might as well go through some of the developments and events and unpack some of what I think. You can share what you think as well in the comments. Kate and Sam teamed up, and I have a real problem with this. I have a lot of issues with the way things have played out in the final episode, and we can finally get into things without me having to tiptoe around what I know. If you watched my review from last week, you will remember that I kept emphasizing the point that Sam knew for all that time that Kate had made his brother forget him over and over, and that she was complicit in the machine that was holding him captive. If you want to nitpick the details of her complicity because she had been pushed into doing so by Dean Shetty, who plucked her out of her traumatic home life at a younger age, fair enough. But Kate is now an adult, and trauma or not, you have to take responsibility for your actions, and putting everything on her trauma, it's simply not enough of an excuse at this point. All the characters have trauma, and they don't necessarily harm other people to the degree that Kate has. Anyway, Sam held so much rage and resentment towards Kate to the point that he attacked her. How exactly am I supposed to believe that now all of a sudden that long-standing grudge has just become negligible? For as much as I've spent the last few weeks oohing and awing over Emma and Sam being super cute together, which they have been, but if we put aside our proclivity for shipping people who have really great chemistry, the rational point of view would be that the person whom Sam has cared the most about is his brother. That's the person who is not only his family, but the one person that kept trying over and over again to get him out of the woods and not being able to do so because Kate would make him forget. I'm not saying Kate orchestrated the whole scheme, but she is specifically the one that would make him forget, which was the most significant deterrent to him being able to develop and execute a rescue plan for Sam. Those two teaming up like this just doesn't make sense. If the whole Gen V squad had decided that they wanted to free the captives from the woods and Sam was going, fine, but Kate needs to stay away from me, don't come near me, don't get in my way, or you will be the one to feel my wrath too. That would have made sense to me. It would still technically be a team up, but a reluctant one. A lot of what happens in episode 8, and I suppose episode 7 as well, as a setup to episode 8, feels like them forcing this show in whatever direction it needed to go in order to follow the trajectory of the main The Boys story arcs, instead of following the organic development of the characters we've gotten to know over these last few weeks. This is a recurring point of feedback of mine as we will progress through other key events of this episode. Really quick though, a cute ship moment. Jordan looking at Marie, who shakes her head no about the notion of them trying to fight Sam to stop him. That is how you show their synchronicity and the ongoing development of their relationship. I know that a lot of Marie Jordan shippers, I don't know if they have a ship name because I've been preoccupied looking at other more pressing topics on social media as of late. The shippers have been wanting them to have a conversation about their feelings and their relationship because they keep getting distracted by the bigger dramatic events of the show. Well, a moment like that of them looking at each other, it's a great way of still showing and communicating something about where they're at, even if it's not a what are we dialogue. We find out that Polarity has been developing micro tears in his brain every time he's been using his powers. This revelation felt abrupt. This felt like they were forcing a dramatic, inciting incident to push Andre to become the new polarity, but how the hell is he even meant to do that when we saw the end of this episode and where he's at now? You can't exactly take up the mantle of your father's superhero alias and legacy when you're in prison. So what was the reason? And all of a sudden, we're having this long-awaited heart-to-heart between father and son when they've struggled all this time to have a breakthrough in their relationship. Look, on its own, it's not a terrible way for their arc to wrap up after this season, but when you combine it with all the other issues I have with this episode, yeah, this also starts to feel abrupt. I couldn't fully tell whether or not Andre is supposed to also be having issues with his superpowers, like maybe he's at risk of his powers turning on him like they did his father. We know that he's prone to self-medicating. The show has made a point of emphasizing that, but I suppose if they would ever like to write Andre off the show, this would be a sufficient way to set that up. Brain tears. Use your powers too hard, just 1 or 2 times, and it will be lights out, Andre, we hardly knew you. I wish they had made better use of polarity, though. And am I biased because the actor has been in a ton of classic films from the late 90s and early 2000s? Yes, I am, but I will not apologize for that. In general, I'm baffled by how short a lot of the episodic runtimes have been for this show, because there are so many characters in the ensemble to explore and develop, and having reached the finale now, I feel like we've only scratched the surface for a lot of them. Sam and Kate get the prisoners out, and it's mayhem. I told you all, 2 weeks ago on this channel that episode 8 was mayhem, and here we have it, the mayhem. I'm not going to overly explain all the violent exchanges of soup on soup and soup on captor attacks, but let's just talk about the devastation in the room, the heartbreak, the Sam, Emma blow up. Now, if you've been watching my reviews, you're probably going to guess that I'm upset about this development, and you would be correct, but it's not for the reason that you would think. I am not inherently opposed to the idea of Sam and Emma having a falling out. In the delusional part of my brain, I might like to imagine them as always being happy, cute, safe, and thriving, but in the rational part of my brain, I'm fine with their relationship having some ups and downs. Even on new seasons of Bridgerton, I know going into it that the main couple will have moments of conflict in their relationship arc. The entire story of those seasons is a couple ending up together, but there will be obstacles along the way. For Sam to be so adoring of Emma, he's hyping her up, and he spends, 10 minutes around some extremists, and now he's doing the exact opposite of what he's done for all these episodes. It just doesn't make sense. If it made sense to you as a viewer, that's fine. You can sit there and watch it with no complaints, but I will complain over here. The parent series, The Boys, had an episode where they showed a character being radicalized, and the culmination of that radicalization was them committing violence against another person. However, it was presented with an expedited timeline. They gave you a montage that conveyed how it took a while for him to become radicalized, because radicalization doesn't just magically happen because you happened to be in the same room as some extremists one time. It just doesn't make sense for Sam to have been forming a bond with someone that has become the closest relationship he now has, and out of nowhere he's just a different person. And mind you, that heel turn came before he asked Kate to turn something off in his brain. Now, on the one hand, I'm glad we got this revelation that Emma can become small without purging. It makes sense that emotions would be the key to better understanding her powers, since that's a recurring thing we've seen across a lot of different soups, which is that their emotions and powers are heavily interconnected. But I really don't like the way they turn Kate and Sam into these villains, because it feels like it's something that's being done to force it in alignment with the rise of fascism storyline of The Boys. Now, we know that the scale of the story of The Boys and the power and influence of certain characters on that show would presumably have a ripple effect that would bleed into the day-to-day reality of the Gen V lead characters, but to me, it feels like it doesn't organically flow with the arcs of the characters that have been developed up until these last 2 episodes. So Emma and Sam, they're not happening right now. We have a season 2, so maybe there will be a path to reconciliation. We will have to wait and see. Andre turned on Kate, which was absolutely the correct choice with the way that she's acting. But for all my romance girlies, and just to be clear, you can be any gender and be a romance girly. Romance girly, I have decided, is a gender neutral term, just like when people from California say dude. So all my romance girlies, despite the dissolution of these other ships, there is one ship that is still standing tall and steady, and that is Marie and Jordan. Listen, as soon as I saw Marie lash out with blood knives to save Jordan, I was so relieved because I was starting to feel like the romance of the show was being abandoned. And to be very clear, part of why I stayed so heavily invested in Gen V was the romance. We're being made to wait, we don't know how long, for Bridgerton Season 3, which I personally will be supporting because Nicola Coughlan has shown herself to be a real one. The arrival of Homelander during the violent conflict and Butcher showing up to the woods, these things really solidified my stance that the parts of the Gen V finale I didn't care for were the parts that felt like the story was being forced to interweave into the ongoing story of the boys. I'm open to seeing what comes next, though. I do plan on watching season 2. I don't know to what degree the Gen V characters might appear in the new season of the boys. Maybe the virus Victoria Newman has will come into play in some capacity. I would also like to know how the hell Marie survived being lasered by Homelander. He's a fascist, so I highly doubt that he would be interested in sparing her. Sam and Kate being spun as heroes, two of the white characters, that also speaks to the way that the stories in the boys universe are being first and foremost centered around this concept of a fascist uprising. And I don't really know what I think about that because it's a television series and an ongoing one. And at this point, I would rather they just come to a swift conclusion, get to it, show the violent uprising to defeat fascism, and call it a day because I'm tired. But for any Jordan Marie shippers who have been wanting these two to have a conversation about feelings more specifically, they're locked up in a room together. They've got nothing but free time. Surely they can just hang out a bit. I know that they need to figure out an escape plan, but you're not going to be able to think of one overnight. And while you're waiting and brainstorming, maybe you have a chat or two or 12 about your feelings. Do it for the romance girlies. Thank you all for watching. Let me know what you thought of the Gen V finale and what you hope to see in season 2, or perhaps how you would like the Gen V characters to be incorporated in the next season of The Boys. And I will see you in another video, perhaps. Bye.